Well, thank you for coming for our launch on Anglicare Australia's launch of Paying It Forward. We are looking at intergenerational wealth transfer, I guess. Anglicare Australia has become increasingly concerned as we hear about the trillions of dollars, the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in basically in history. The reason we're concerned is that wealth in Australia is not taxed, so it's not captured. We had a look in this report. We've had a look at 10 other OECD countries and looked at what comparable countries do. And it turns out that Australia is actually a complete outlier in this. We are the only country not to tax wealth at the time that the owner of that wealth passes away. No one likes to talk about that, but it's a reality. Why this matters and why Anglicare Australia is concerned is that when we move wealth from one generation to another without capturing any of it for the public purse, we actually embed wealth inequality. Now that's bad for the individuals who don't have that wealth, but it's also bad for us as a society. We know that social cohesion is much more likely and much easier to have and to hold on to when wealth is more equally distributed. So when we looked at these countries, other countries tax people through their lifetimes. They tax the estates. They have lots of different ways of doing it. And as I say, Australia is an outlier in doing that. Now it's important for us to remember as well that Australia only stopped taxing inheritances in 1979. It's not un-Australian, it's not something that we've never done. This has only happened for a generation that we haven't taxed it. And that was just a decision by a state premier that the other states followed, and then the federal government that followed. One of the reasons for our concern about this wealth transfer is that many people who are at the moment in the baby boomers, in that older range of the baby boomers, much of their wealth has actually come through windfall gains. It's actually come out of the community, the public purse, the family purse, the Australian purse, if you like. For example, if we look at superannuation concessions alone, $45.5 billion came out of the public purse in 1 year to go to superannuation accounts. That's actually almost as much and will soon overtake the Australian age pension. When we look at where that goes, 58% of that money, of that $44.5 billion, goes to the top 20% of income of people with wealth, the top 20%, and 0% goes to the bottom fifth, the bottom 20%. So this is an opportunity to recapture some of that money as it comes back through. If we allow it to just go down to the next generation, it just concentrates that wealth. I've been challenged in the last couple of days and said, well, no one likes new taxes. That's one of the messages. They're not a new tax. We only stopped doing this in 1979. And while it might be true that no one likes new taxes, people do like roads. They like disaster recovery. They like to know that that bridge on the Bruce Highway was put back within a week so we could get freight back up to northern Queensland. They like hospitals, they like schools, they like all those things that taxes actually pay for. So the things that we're looking for, really what we're trying to do is to start a conversation about this, to be grown-ups about it as our national generation reaches that level where we're going to have that big generation to pass down that inheritance. So we've got 3 specific recommendations, but really we just want to start a conversation. Those recommendations are that some countries actually tax wealth during people's lifetimes. So Sweden, for example, has a much higher tax on wealth on the way through. We have rejected that so far in Australia. We don't pay capital gains tax. We have concessions for that. As I say, we've got the big concessions for superannuation, but that is one option. We're also proposing that we levy a tax on high value estates. So estates where the non-home component is over $2 million. Now, obviously you would want to index that. We want to take the family home out of this. We want to take the family farm out of this so that we're not getting into those emotional areas where we know that when someone dies, the family want to have hold of that. We know that sometimes the spouse is left and we don't want to have them homeless. But by proposing a limit at today's value, at 2025's value of $2 million, we believe that that allows normal families, normal households to pass on that wealth to the next generation, but bring some of that extra wealth back into the public purse again. And our last conversation was about superannuation. We're now approaching the time where those people retiring will have had most of their lifetimes working in compulsory super. Now, it started low, but that will increasingly get through as that system matures. We're also seeing that people are dying with up to 90% of their superannuation still in their pockets. This is a system that's meant to be there for retirement, for living with dignity and having a decent lifetime in your retirement. It's not something that's meant to be handed on to the family. So we want to have a look at talking where there are large superannuation balances, about making sure that if they're not spent in the person's lifetime, that they come back to the public purse. And that is often the public purse that has funded those through superannuation concessions. So what we're trying to do here today is to start a conversation. If we don't have this conversation ahead of this huge wealth transfer, we are missing out on so much. We're missing out on the potential to bring more services, to have more money in the public purse. And I have to keep saying, this makes Australia an outlier. We're not doing it the same way that everybody else is doing it. We're actually, if we don't do this, approaching a time where it will matter more who your parents are in Australia than what you do, what you contribute. We're heading to be an inheritocracy if we don't have this conversation and if we don't address this. Thank you.
I have a question. Cost of living crisis, like people going to their parents, prices for taxing that.
Well, there's a few things that we could think about here. One of them would be taxing wealth during people's lifetimes. And we're talking about people who are very wealthy. Now, if we did that, we would have more tax in the system and we would be able to offer more cost of living relief. So we would be able to get that through to the people that need it. The other thing is when we actually talk about at the point of inheritance, we're talking about really concentrating on high value estates. We're not talking about the average family. We're saying that we would like to set this at an estate that's looking at $2 million and above, after we take out the family home, after we take out the family farm, after we take anything that the family relies on. So we're looking at very high wealth individuals already, and that would bring this back into the public purse. It would allow the Australian public to have access to that, as it once had access to it. Many of these, as I say, much of this wealth has come through windfall gains, through real estate, through shares in companies like Qantas and Telstra when they were nationalised originally, when they were privatised originally, and of course those superannuation concessions. So we actually think that this will help a cost of living crisis. We hope we won't be in this crisis forever, but it will actually help even out the costs and even out the amount of money that people have to deal with day-to-day expenses. Sorry?
What rate are you proposing?
We're not actually proposing particular rates. What's really interesting is around the world, people have different rates. Countries have hierarchies depending on whether someone is a direct relation, whether they are a relation once removed, like a niece or a cousin. Some countries also have specific better rates, preferable rates for donations to charities. So again, that helps spread that money out at the time of that person's estate coming to bear. What we want to look at is bringing those back into the tax, back into the taxable income. We do want to see that kind of money that goes into superannuation comes back out again if it's still not spent at what would have been paid at income tax. We know that it went into there at a very preferable rate. It has reduced the taxation, the base of tax for Australia, and it means that there is basically a much higher burden to gain that tax that we need from people who are working from an income, who often have less money than those who gain their money from wealth. Good to go? Thank you. Thanks for the question. Do I need to flick through the report or anything? Don't tell me I've scrubbed my nails. Yeah. Whoops. You don't have to do this. I was just checking before I walked away. Yeah.
Thank you. You got the wrong cameraman. The guy in the white shirt probably had 100 questions. Yeah. Oh, he's very much into superannuation.
Putting the bucket in on the good idea to do it today. It's so crazy.
Let's not even